This week on Christian World News, Israel accuses Hezbollah of dragging the region to the brink of war. As the fighting heats up, more than a dozen Christian villages in South Lebanon are caught in the crossfire. Plus, Russia and North Korea join forces, pledging mutual support in the event of war. As South Korea watches with concern, one Christian lawmaker believes there can be peace on the peninsula. And religion on the campaign trail. One candidate being compared to a messiah, another making the sign of the cross at an abortion rally. Why some say the tactic could backfire. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas. My colleague Wendy Griffith is out. Dragging the region to destruction. That's how the Israeli Defense Force describes Hezbollah's relentless attacks on northern Israel. Meanwhile, the leader of the terror group is promising a fight without rules if Israel goes to war. CBN's Julie Stahl reports from Jerusalem.
Israel is warning that Iranian-backed Hezbollah is risking all-out war. This is in response to last week's intense rocket attacks, the worst of the war so far.
Hezbollah's increasing aggression is bringing us to the brink of what could be a wider escalation, one that could have devastating consequences for Lebanon and the entire region.
Since October 7th, Hezbollah has fired more than 5,000 projectiles at Israeli civilians, forcing the evacuation of nearly 100,000 Israelis. Haggari says Iran is behind it all.
Iran's terror proxies continue to drag the region to destruction. Israel will continue fighting against Iran's axis of evil on all fronts, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in other fronts.
Avraham Levine of the Alma Center told CBN News since the beginning, most of the world has been ignoring the Hezbollah attack on northern Israel.
We're talking about a country that's supported with good connections in Europe, with France, good connections with the United States that supports the Lebanese army. Yet there's no pressure on the country to stop, eliminate, or even slow down this attack on the northern front.
The attacks are devastating parts of northern Israel, causing huge fires in the summer heat and dryness.
We're talking about thousands of acres, maybe up to 15,000 acres in the north, all across the Western Galilee, Northern Galilee, and the northern Golan Heights, all from Hezbollah shooting towards the forests, exploiting the situation for their benefit. U.S.
envoy Amos Hochstein traveled from Israel to Beirut as he meets with officials in an effort to prevent an all-out war between the two sides. Tuesday, Hezbollah released drone footage showing targets deep inside Israel, including Haifa Bay, and military targets in civilian areas in what Israelis see as a clear signal of its intentions. Meanwhile, the IDF says its top generals in the north approved its operational plans for an offensive in Lebanon against Hezbollah. Hezbollah's leader says the Iranian-backed terrorist group will hold nothing back if Israel attacks.
If the war is imposed on Lebanon, the resistance will fight without control, without rules, and without a ceiling.
He also threatened to drag Cyprus into the war if that island nation lets Israel's military or civilian jets use its runways. Meanwhile, as Hezbollah's shelling of northern Israel increases, citizens there are tired and afraid.
It's scary because you don't know when it is coming to you. Suddenly you have an alarm. Suddenly missiles fall.
It is unbearable. It can't be contained. It is impossible to live with it.
Many among the roughly 80,000 Israelis displaced by all the shelling have been hoping they could return home by September 1st when school starts again. But Israel's chief military spokesman says that's not likely. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thank you, Julie. While much of the northern parts of Israel is evacuated, Christians in South Lebanon fear for their future. Earlier this year, I had a chance to visit some of these brave believers around one of Christianity's most holy days. Take a look. It's a scene that has played out each year since 1890, when St. George's Church opened its doors here in the hills of South Lebanon. Lebanese Christians taking part in the Good Friday procession, carrying a cross with a Jesus Christ statue through the town of Klea. This year was no different.
Our Christian ancestors here faced war, and they never abandoned their land or their faith. They stood fast against all adversities, and we're going to do the same, because that's the spirit we inherited from them.
Klea and more than a dozen other Christian villages sit near the border with Israel. On October 8th, when Hezbollah started launching rockets at Israel in support of the Hamas attacks, Christians here suddenly found themselves caught in a conflict they didn't ask for or want.
Just because one group decided to go to war with Israel, I'm almost 100% sure that all of us are victims of other people's agendas, and we want no part in it.
Since war began in Gaza, the Islamic terror group controlling much of South Lebanon has fired more than 3,000 rockets at Israeli civilian and military targets from area hilltops and villages. Al-Qiyam, a village adjacent to Klea, has felt multiple Israeli rocket and missile strikes during this time.
Al-Qiyam is one of Hezbollah's strongholds, and that's the main reason Israel is targeting that town.
Some 90,000 people from South Lebanon, mostly Christians, evacuated to the north after Hezbollah started launching their rockets. Among those staying, Christian entrepreneur George Salame, forced to close his carpentry business due to constant shelling.
We thought the war would end in 10 or 15 days, but it's kept going on, and most of the businesses in the villages got affected. And now because of this, we have no income.
Here in Klea and other small Christian villages that dot the South Lebanon landscape, the big concern now is that Hezbollah could potentially come into their communities and use their neighborhoods in order to launch missile attacks against Israel.
What scares us the most is if Hezbollah starts firing recklessly. For example, last week, they fired missiles at Israel, and most of their missiles didn't reach their targets, and they fell short hitting Lebanese towns. One of those missiles landed in the Christian village of Marjayun.
Christians used to be the majority in the south, not anymore. Their numbers have slowly dwindled since Hezbollah moved in.
The situation for Christians, not only here in the south, but the whole country, has been dismal, and there's no stability, and because of this, there's a lot of Christian migration, mostly from the south.
Daher, a Christian who's reported on here for more than 30 years, fears this latest crisis will spark an even larger exodus.
Honestly, people here don't dream anymore. We had a lot of dreams when we were young. We had dreams of living in peace and comfort. We worked hard for it, but the years proved us wrong, and all our dreams have evaporated.
Father Pierre tells CBN News that despite being caught between Hezbollah and Israel, the Christians of South Lebanon will continue to preach a message of hope and peace.
We are the peacemakers. Our Lord Jesus Christ told us to pray for our enemies, and that's why we're not going to stop praying. Our God can remove this dark cloud, and He's able to change and soften hearts and bring peace to our area.
The risk of an expanding regional war is increasing by the hour. We need to continue to pray for this specific region. Coming up, Russia and North Korea sign a pledge to help each other in case of war. We'll introduce you to a South Korean lawmaker who believes there is still peace. There can still be peace on the peninsula. Welcome back. Russian leader Vladimir Putin is hailing what he calls a breakthrough agreement with North Korea. The new treaty reportedly requires a mutual pledge to provide military assistance in the event of a war, calling on North Korea and Russia to use all means at its disposal to send help without delay if the other is invaded or pushed to the brink of war. An estimated 34,000 North Koreans have made the life or death journey from bondage to freedom in South Korea. As my colleague Chris Mitchell reports from Seoul, one defector has become the #1 target of the North Korean regime.
Behind me is the Parliament of South Korea. One member of the legislature made a remarkable and miraculous journey from being a child beggar in North Korea to a member of South Korea's parliament. CBN News met with that legislator, Ji Sung-ho, who now has an ambitious goal.
My hope as a member of the National Assembly is for the North Korean regime to collapse so that North Koreans can enjoy freedom and believe in God. I want to dedicate myself to the creation of such freedom and unity.
Sung-ho showed us a painting of a kutsebi, what they call a child beggar in North Korea, and how he survived as a child when millions starved to death. At age 14, he lost his leg and hand in an accident. And at the age of 24, Sung-ho fled to freedom.
I escaped North Korea with no leg and no left hand. I swam the Tumen River to avoid the eyes of the North Korean soldiers. I walked 6,000 kilometers to China, Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand, and turned around 10,000 kilometers to reach South Korea. The fact that I came to freedom on crutches made the whole world aware of how strong the will of human beings is to yearn for freedom.
In China, Sung-ho heard the gospel and became a Christian. And when he came to South Korea, it was like a dream.
Everything I thought of, dreamt of, and prayed for came true. For example, the dream of wanting to eat a full meal, such as chicken, has come true. And I had the dream of walking the world once again. When I came to South Korea, the government gave me a new prosthetic leg and arm, so I was able to walk again.
President Trump honored Sung-ho during the 2018 State of the Union address. Because of his high profile, North Korea has named him their #1 target. He says countries should pressure China not to extradite defectors back to North Korea, where they then face death or life as political prisoners.
People imprisoned in North Korean political prison camps are treated as animals, not people, and everybody in North Korea are well aware of this.
Sung-ho now serves as an advocate for human rights and the 34,000 defectors in South Korea. His role model is Martin Luther King, and this former beggar child now meets with world leaders.
My message is that North Koreans have the right to live in freedom, and those who live in a free democracy have a responsibility to save those who are imprisoned and dying. They have a responsibility to make sure that even those who are starving to death live and enjoy the freedom we enjoy.
Despite the current situation, Sung-ho believes reunification is possible.
I don't think it's impossible because it's clear that North Korea is a dictatorship, and I don't know of any dictatorship in history that has lasted forever. Furthermore, I have the idea that politics should be carried out from a long-term perspective so that free democracy and the gospel can be preached to North Koreans and integration can be achieved after unification.
Sung-ho asked Christians around the world to pray.
I believe that the gospel entering North Korea and the collapse of the North Korean system depends not on human efforts, but on God's hand. I would appreciate it if you would join us in prayer so that we can reunify as a free and democratic nation.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Seoul, South Korea.
Thank you, Chris. Up next, an American presidential candidates are bracing religion on the campaign trail. Find out why this move could backfire. Welcome back to Christian World News. Here in America, the presidential campaign is in full swing. Both President Biden and former President Trump are firing up their bases. Part of that plan includes bringing religion into the mix. It's a strategy some critics call inappropriate and possibly ineffective. Charlene Aaron has the story.
Religion has influenced politics since the founding of America. The 2024 campaign trail is filled with religious undertones, and that message is embraced by some who see their faith and country under attack. From this messianic-like video,
God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker, so God gave us Trump.
To comparisons of the former president to Jesus Christ.
Believe that the man that can help this nation, the one man that was ridiculed, destroyed as Jesus, Trump, can come back and save the American dream for all.
Welcome to the 2024 intersection of faith and politics in America. In 2016, President Trump entered the scene as not a regular churchgoer, nor seen as a person of deep faith. Now, 8 years later,
we have to bring Christianity back into our lives and back into what will be again a great nation.
Jackson Lehmeyer heads Pastors for Trump, a support group supporting the former president.
The religious themes, I think, are very appropriate because this is a very spiritual battle.
Leading up to Easter, Trump began promoting the sale of the God Bless the USA Bible.
This Bible is the King James Version and also includes our Founding Father documents. I want to have a lot of people have it. You have to have it for your heart, for your soul.
How in the world could pastors and Christians complain about the potential president of the United States encouraging Americans to read the Bible? That's what all of us pastors want.
Although the Trump-endorsed Bible, which sells for $59.99, has also drawn rebuke.
There's a Bible out now that includes the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Isn't that wonderful? No, it's disgusting. It's blasphemous. It's a ploy.
Michael Ware, author of The Spirit of Our Politics, sees this display as strategic.
He is clearly, trying to appeal not just to Christians, but to people who are in a sort of antagonistic mode in our politics. I think it's clearly, it works for some.
Nationally syndicated radio host Eric Erickson disagrees, calling such strategy ineffective.
He's already got this base of people to vote for him. He risks alienating them by cheapening their gospel. I think he probably needs to leave Jesus out of it.
On the other side, President Biden, a Catholic, comes off much more muted. His recent move, however, to make a sign of the cross at a Florida abortion rally didn't go over well.
Making the sign of the cross is one of the most profound gestures a Catholic can make in showing reverence for Christ's death on the cross. To misuse this sacred gesture is to make a mockery of our Catholic faith.
The backlash comes at a time when the president's disapproval rating among Catholics stands at 64%, an all-time high. Regent University professor Mark David Hall, author of Who's Afraid of Christian Nationalism, calls religious messaging in politics inappropriate.
Obviously, it's fine to be a good patriotic Christian, to love our nation, but it should be a properly ordered love of nation, not an inordinate love. And I certainly understand why people would support Donald Trump for the presidency, but they should recognize he's not a savior, political or otherwise.
Some point to religious symbols displayed during the January 6th Capitol riot as proof Christian nationalism is on the rise. Hall counters that while the movement does exist and is problematic, he doesn't believe it poses an existential threat to American democracy or the church.
I think that about 20% of Americans would like to move to that sort of cultural Christianity. I think this is nowhere near as scary as what all the critics call Christian nationalism, but I still think there are good prudential, biblical, constitutional, and theological reasons to reject even this benign form of Christian nationalism.
Meanwhile, Ware offers a word of caution to Christian voters ahead of the election.
Whether it comes from the right or the left, whether it comes from Republicans or Democrats, I would encourage Christians to not be so easily flattered, to not be so quick to have their ears tickled.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thank you, Charlene. You can get Christian World News delivered straight to your inbox. To sign up for our weekly email update, just go to cbnworldnews.com. We'll be back right after this. Finally this week, parts of southern Brazil are still struggling to recover after devastating floods this spring. At least 169 people died and more than 600,000 displaced. CBN's Operation Blessing has been on the ground from day one, serving in the hardest hit areas. The rush to get tents, medicines, and other critical supplies to the flooded south continues. Brazil's Air Force delivering that urgent aid this week as residents of Rio Grande do Sul now face a new threat to their state.
We've been having quite a few patients with symptoms of possible leptospirosis.
The bacterial disease spread by rats now affecting nearly 1,000 people, as parts of the state have been underwater for a month after catastrophic flooding ravaged the area. CBN's Operation Blessing is on the ground right now, deploying its resources and staff to the hardest-hit regions of Brazil's Rio Grande do Sul.
Weeks after the disaster happened and the flood went through all this area, families lost everything, even hope.
The aid agency providing hot meals to nearly 50,000 people, distributing hundreds of solar lamps and bringing clean water to those affected by weeks of torrential rain. Operation Blessing partnering with local ministries to bring critical aid to families like Rosalinga's.
The essential things we need are food and water. I feel blessed by God to have these things and to see people help each other like this. To see everyone helping is a blessing.
Partnering with the local church and local NGOs like the one that you see behind me in this little warehouse, we're distributing food, hygiene, blankets. We have families here lining up for hours, receiving what Operation Blessing is bringing to them.
Health officials warn of more fatalities as the outbreak of waterborne diseases continue to spread.
We've had several cases of gastroenteritis. Hepatitis A is also very common. There are several infectious diseases that we can come into contact with through contaminated water.
Meanwhile, access to health care is a huge problem at the moment in the state. The floodwaters affected more than 3,000 health centers like hospitals, clinics, and pharmacies. Operation Blessing responded by setting up staging areas in safe zones that are manned by teams of medical volunteers to attend to the sick and injured. In areas spared by floodwaters, Operation Blessing hit stores, shopping for cleaning supplies and other essential items that could help residents begin their rebuilding efforts. Hundreds of families receiving boxes and bags filled with immediate care packs, along with a time of encouragement and prayer from Operation Blessing staff and volunteers.
We're so committed to be here, to be a ray of hope in the name of Jesus for them.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us this week. Until next week, from all of us here from the headquarters of the Christian Broadcasting Network, we wish you a fantastic week ahead. Goodbye and God bless you.